The story begins with Rindu getting asked out by a boy, but she rejects him, saying that she dislikes frivolous men like him. However, he doesn't take no for an answer and ends up tapping her viciously while she apologizes to Sohei, the boy she likes. Sadly, the happy noises she's making overtakes the apology while the boy mentions that Sohei's girlfriend has been trained to his own liking. Apparently, it is a manga he was reading when suddenly, he wakes up and realizes that it was a dream. Following that, he goes to wash his ugly, disgusting face, thinking about how that erotic manga appeared in his dream. Afterward, he takes a look at his face and screams after finding out that it's the same as the boy named Ruichi from that manga. He can't believe that he has become that scumbag, but tries to stay calm and grasp the situation. This results in him remembering that his real name is Shishido, and it appears that he has been reincarnated into the world of that manga. Apparently, it's not any normal manga, but one in which the mangaka makes sure to draw girls' peaches prettier than their faces. In the manga, the heroine was assaulted by this boy who later took some pictures to blackmail her. Having no other choice, Rindu always gives up and enjoys the pleasurable experience. Furthermore, it's a little too intense for this kind soul as he accidentally bought this manga and was disgusted by it. Even though he is a perv at heart, he doesn't like cuckolding. Now, it really sucks for him to become someone he hates and notices that Ruichi had a terrible family environment, which might be the reason he became such a scumbag. Nonetheless, this isn't an excuse for what he's doing and starts wondering how he should live this new life. After laying down for a while, not a single good thought enters his mind, and when he tries to get up, a paper ball appears under his feet, causing him to slip and fall onto the ground. Later, Ruichi decides to take a walk outside and is annoyed that the memories from his past life are returning. Just then, he notices that everyone is getting scared after looking at him and figures that it's probably because of his Shrek-looking face. Suddenly, he hears a scream and witnesses some boys trying to harass a girl. Ruichi gets annoyed, thinking it's another one of the pickup scenarios and tries not to get involved, but eventually calls those boys out and appears in front of them. The other boy tries to act tough and Ruichi lets him know that hearing his blabbering annoys him, ultimately telling them to scram. Without wasting a second, the boys decide to run for their lives. Before long, the girl calls out his name, and after checking out her hot and glamorous body from head to toe, he figures that it's none other than Rindu. He can't believe something like this happened and tries to talk to her, but his voice only ends up scaring the poor girl. Realizing that her reaction makes perfect sense, he walks past Rindu, apologizing for scaring her. This comes as a shock to Rindu while Ruichi thinks how such a reaction from her is expected. Just then, she ends up thanking Ruichi for his help, making him stop in his tracks and wondering when was the last time someone thanked him. With a smile on his face, Ruichi replies back to Rindu, causing her to blush and run away. Ruichi then starts thinking why the heroine is thanking him and remembers that he is present before the main story starts. He then decides to avoid the pathetic route he takes in the manga and begins feeling much better. Lastly, he decides to try his best to avoid getting involved with Rindu. On the other hand, Rindu, on her way back, can't believe that someone like Ruichi can smile like that. The next day at school, Ruichi decides to avoid the plotline of the manga no matter what it takes. Later in class, everyone begins to discuss how Ruichi arrived so early in the morning, and when he takes a look at them, they all shit their pants. Ruichi is both surprised and pissed at how intense their reaction was, and before long, the class door opens and Rindu makes an appearance. All the NPC from their class begin greeting Rindu and complimenting her beauty. Ruichi also looks at her, thinking how her aura outshines everyone even in school. Surprisingly, she walks up to Ruichi and greets her. Shocked, Ruichi greets her back and she thanks him for the help yesterday. Following that, Ruichi tells her to take her ass back to her seat, making Rindu laugh and say that he's pretty curt. All their classmates can't believe that she is talking to Ruichi, while Ruichi still can't believe that this happened. Ruichi is still thinking about this situation when he notices someone gazing at him. That person turns out to be a classmate who seems to be staring into his soul. Instantly, Ruichi realizes who that guy is and remembers a scene from manga where Ruichi had Rindu all over him and told Sohei that he will be breaking her bed when they return home. Sohei couldn't believe what he was seeing and started shouting. Back in the present, Ruichi knows that Sohei is the protagonist of the series. All the memories related to manga came back to Ruichi even though he barely remembered their names. However, he can't understand the gaze as he currently hasn't done anything. Furthermore, he isn't against the two of them getting together, and thinks about how he was reincarnated without his consent. Later that day, Ruichi wakes up after sleeping at his desk and figures that it's already afternoon. This makes him wonder why no one woke him up and quickly realizes that it's impossible for them to do such a thing. Just when he is about to leave, Ruichi notices the flowers and realizes that they are getting dry as there isn't enough water. Simultaneously, Rindu enters the classroom, making Ruichi wonder why the person he's trying to avoid is always there with him. He then lets her know about the water in the flower pot, which kind of shocks her. Ruichi realizes that he isn't the type to do such things and tries to walk out of the classroom, but is asked by her to stop. Following that, she accompanies him to refill the flower pot and lets him know that she was also worried about the flowers. As someone in the same class, she also bears responsibility. After they are done, Ruichi mentions that the flowers look a bit livelier, which makes Rindu crack up and comment on how one can never trust rumors. Afterward, Rindu elaborates and tells him about all the rumors going around. But Ruichi thinks that his past memories don't change the things he has done, and it's not like he can erase this person's past. Rindu then says that she thinks Ruichi is a really kind person, as someone who isn't kind wouldn't do such a thing. Ruichi starts to think that she's pretty naive and figures that she's like this because she hasn't seen the real Ruichi. This results in him calling her out and doing the good old wall slam. After that, he advises her not to trust him too much, or a predator like him might devour her. Doing this makes Ruichi think that she might be disgusted now, but little does he know that she's actually quite hot and bothered. At first, Ruichi is confused, then he realizes that it had completely slipped his mind, as in reality, Rindu's a pain-seeking perv who likes her workouts rough. In the end, Ruichi says that he was just kidding and dashes away without wasting any more time. Back at home, Ruichi thinks about how close that was and regrets being alone with her, as it's not a good idea. Soon after, he gets hungry and decides to buy something from the supermarket. Knowing that his cooking skills are as bad as the chefs in Kitchen Nightmares episodes. To his surprise, Rindu is already shopping and Ruichi tries to get away from her until she grabs her shirt and mentions that there is no reason for him to ignore her. Following that, Rindu questions why he is only buying ramen, to which he replies that it's his staple food. Ruichi further explains that he lives alone as he doesn't have a family. This surprises her and Rindu apologizes for being insensitive. Realizing that now she might worry about him for nothing, Ruichi tries to get away, but she once again stops him and suggests cooking dinner for him. But to her surprise, he blatantly refuses. However, Rindu doesn't plan on letting him go that easily and starts begging him to take her home with him. He can't believe she is asking to visit the home of a guy who lives alone and starts thinking of all the positions Ruichi clapped her in the manga. To avoid this, he suggests walking Rindu home if she's scared, and, in the end, Rindu questions if Ruichi is really that against bringing her home. Having no other choice, he ends up bringing her to his house and regrets being so weak-willed. She seems surprised that his apartment seems less dirty than she expected and quickly puts on an apron. Following that, Rindu begins cooking some food for him while Ruichi sits there in silence, thinking about a way he can make her leave quickly. Soon after, he glances at her and realizes how refreshing it feels, as even before his reincarnation, he was a complete loner. Ruichi doesn't even remember when was the last time he ate a home-cooked meal. Eventually, she presents the food she cooked and lets him know that it's quite simple. But Ruichi finds it yummy enough, and after taking a bite, can't believe how delicious it is. Without wasting any time, he begins devouring the food, only for the food to be stuck in his throat. Rindu then asks if it's delicious, to which he replies that this is the first time he has had this delicious food. Rindu seems happy with his reaction and Ruichi advises her to eat quickly, or it'll be all gone. After they are done eating, Rindu mentions that seeing him delighted makes it worth it, and he shows his gratitude for all she did. Suddenly, it strikes him that he needs to send her home. Meanwhile, Rindu decides to go and wash the dishes, but accidentally steps on his mayonnaise cloth, causing her to slip and fall. Simultaneously, Ruichi tries to catch her from falling down and manages to catch her, only to find himself on top of Rindu. Ruichi quickly apologizes, wanting to step back, but shockingly, she holds on to him, which comes as a surprise to her as well. In the end, Rindu apologizes for her actions while Ruichi thinks about how the boy in the manga always used to bring girls home for pounding purposes, and if Rindu came to his house knowing the rumors, she shouldn't complain if he slides it in. He then starts remembering all the manga panels he used to beat his sausage to. but just as she calls out his name, Ruichi quickly gets off of her, apologizing, but she mentions that all he was trying to do was save her. This makes Ruichi realize that being alone with a girl isn't right for him and wonders if the girl he thought about was Rindu or someone else. Sometime later, Ruichi is walking Rindu home and talks about the rumors that have been going around. Specifically, the ones about him sleeping with many women. When Rindu asks if they are true, he agrees and advises her not to visit such a person's house. Rindu replies that she just couldn't leave him alone and comments that she won't do these acts with just anyone. But when Ruichi asks her if she said something, Rindu dismisses it and eventually, they arrive at her house. After saying goodbye, Ruichi walks away until she calls out his name and suggests coming over to his house some other time as well. After she enters her house, Rindu's mom talks about Rindu going out to dinner with her friend and Rindu, flustered, runs to her room. Afterward, she lays down on her bed and begins thinking about the expressions Ruichi made while eating the food. Furthermore, the image of him on top also comes to her mind, causing her to start playing with her imagination while putting one hand on her cave. Just when things are starting to get better, her phone starts ringing and the person on the other side turns out to be Sohei. He can see her room from his window and questions if she comes home late. Furthermore, he mentions how Rindu has been talking to Ruichi lately, wondering if that guy has been threatening her. To his surprise, Rindu makes an excuse and hangs up on him, thinking about how Ruichi is a kind guy no matter what others say. Meanwhile, Sohei can't believe this just happened even though the two of them are childhood friends. Additionally, he remembers her promise to marry him in the future, making him question why Rindu trusts Ruichi more than him. On the other hand, Ruichi is back at his house when someone knocks on the door. When he opens the door, he finds a straight-out baddie standing in front of him, reeking of alcohol. Without hesitation, the girl named Yorimi steps in and begins complaining about her day. Furthermore, she compliments his clean apartment and thinks that it must be the influence of a new woman. Ruichi denies this and asks Yorimi if she is dating someone. This makes Yorimi sit next to him, saying that she isn't and mentioning that a girl won't be satisfied with others after hooking up with him. After that, she asks him to let her stay over and agrees to go one round if he insists. This pisses him off and Ruichi tells her that no one wants to sleep with a drunk girl like her. The next day, Rindu unconsciously ends up coming to Ruichi's apartment and begins wondering if it's because of what happened yesterday, but quickly takes that thought out of her mind. Just then, she notices his apartment door opening and him coming out with a G-cup mommy. This comes as a shock to Rindu and she quickly hides. Ruichi notices someone looking at him but decides to ignore it. Before leaving, Yorimi gives him a kiss on the cheek and promises to come visit him again. Meanwhile, Rindu can't get Yorimi out of her mind and wonders if Ruichi and her smash last night. Even though she already knows about the rumors surrounding him, Rindu can't figure out why her heart is aching. Just then, Sohei surprises her from the back and greets her. Furthermore, he puts his hand on her shoulder that kinda makes her uncomfortable. This results in Rindu getting away and wanting to walk to school on her own. Just then, Ruichi runs past Sohei and pulls her closer to himself. This little interaction makes her flustered and wonders if Ruichi is finally making a move. But in reality, all he did was save her from the incoming traffic. After she apologizes for being reckless, Ruichi makes sure to give her a pat on the head, making Rindu think about him claiming to be a delinquent and still treating her so kindly. Ruichi suddenly realizes what he just did and decides to quickly walk away, leaving Sohei in a state of anger. Before the reincarnation happened, a girl was sitting alone in a bar when Ruichi appeared out of nowhere. He then asked the bartender to bring some drinks for them, and the bartender warned the girl about what kind of person Ruichi is. Surprisingly, the girl thanked him for his concern and mentioned that she feels like being in the company of someone. This gives the bartender enough reason to keep quiet, while the girl informs Ruichi that her husband kicked the bucket. Ruichi figures that she got lonely and visited the city, but according to her, she only wanted to have a few drinks. Later that night, they both find themselves kissing each other in his house. That girl then introduced herself as Seiki and asked Ruichi to mess her glorious body real good, to which he instantly agreed. Back in the present, Ruichi wakes up on the school rooftop, realizing that he fell asleep after eating lunch. He realizes that it was his memories before reincarnation and thinks that his past self had no shame getting involved with a hot MILF like that. Before long, he hears someone call out his name, and that person turns out to be none other than Rindu herself. She asks if he always eats lunch on the rooftop, to which he agrees and asks what she wants. Rindu starts thinking about this herself, and the image of him with Yorimi comes to her mind. However, she dismisses it and asks if he plans on eating something healthy today. Ruichi mocks her for acting like his mother, and she figures that he plans on eating cup noodles again. But Ruichi argues that he's eating out at a bar and promises that he won't be drinking. Rindu is not very convinced by his answer, and begins wondering if he might pay the hotties to give his miserable self some attention. This results in her making up her mind and deciding to come along. As expected, Ruichi quickly refuses and remembers that he has already been through a lot after what happened last time. Nonetheless, he tells her that it's not a good place for girls, and Rindu replies that she became a bad girl the moment she decided to go with him. Just as Ruichi tries to argue with her, a gust of wind exposes her Hello Kitty underwear, making her freak out and instantly sit down. Furthermore, she asks Ruichi if he saw that, causing him to panic as well. Later that day, Rindu informs her mom about her plans, and she decides to go out as well. After Rindu leaves, her mom realizes that she's all alone and figures she should go to that place again. On the other hand, Ruichi advises Rindu to watch out for the weirdos, and she replies that it'll be fine as Ruichi will always come to her rescue. Soon after, they enter the same bar he saw in his dream, and the bartender once again warns Rindu. But Ruichi lets him know that he's not like that with Rindu, surprising the bartender, who mentions that he seems quite different. Eventually, he decides to treat them like customers and asks Rindu to sit down. Just then, another customer enters the bar, and that person turns out to be Seiki, the same girl Ruichi had a wet dream of. Shockingly, Rindu recognizes Seiki and calls her mother. Ruichi can't believe Rindu just called Seiki her mom, and has already figured out that Seiki is the MILF from his dreams. This makes him realize that he hooked up with his classmate's mother and knows that it'll be awkward if Rindu finds out. Meanwhile, Rindu calls it a coincidence that her mom also came to the same bar, while the bartender starts giving Ruichi a serious glare. Seiki then asks Rindu to introduce her to her friend, and Ruichi greets Seiki, knowing that she's also keeping it a secret. Following that, Rindu begins showering Ruichi with praises, telling Seiki about all he did along with the fact that she came to the bar in order to keep an eye on Ruichi. After hearing all Rindu has to say, Seiki sits next to her and thanks Ruichi for helping out her daughter. But Ruichi mentions that he just happened to save her by chance, and Rindu lets Seiki know that Ruichi is a really kind person. Following that, she orders some food for herself as well. While the three of them are eating, Ruichi takes a look at Seiki, and seeing her smile makes him think that everything is alright for now. After they are done, Rindu decides to go to the restroom, leaving the two of them alone. Seiki talks about them meeting again like this, and says how she got involved in such absurd ties. Furthermore, she asks Ruichi to keep that thing a secret from Rindu. Ruichi agrees, saying that it might strain the relationship between her and her daughter, which comes as a surprise to Seiki. She comments on how sweet Ruichi is and says that Rindu might not actually scorn them. However, she quickly dismisses this statement and questions Ruichi if he's going out with Rindu. Ruichi disagrees, saying that it's all because he saved her by chance. Seiki replies that Rindu must really like him and starts getting close to him. But when he tries pushing her away, Seiki mentions that she deserves a reward for covering for him. Having no other choice, Ruichi ends up giving her a pat on the head when suddenly, they hear a scream followed by Rindu questioning her mother's actions. Seiki apologizes, saying that she got a little tipsy, and starts complimenting Ruichi's muscles, causing Rindu to grab Ruichi and say that he's hers. This surprises the both of them, and Rindu rephrases the sentence, telling Seiki that he is her benefactor. Seiki ends up apologizing while the bartender finds it hard to control his laughter. Later, Seiki informs them that she will hang out at the bar for a while, and before leaving, Ruichi advises her not to drink too much. On their way back, Ruichi is still freaked out by all this, and Rindu asks him if he was already acquainted with her mother. Seeing him address her mother by her first name made her think that way, and Ruichi agrees, telling Rindu that he didn't know she was her mother. Furthermore, Rindu then asks Ruichi why he doesn't call her by her first name. When he tries to refuse, Rindu begins complaining about him giving unfair treatment to her mother. Eventually, he agrees and calls Rindu by her first name, causing her to get delighted. Seeing her face makes Ruichi skip a heartbeat, and he decides to quickly get back home. After walking Rindu home, Ruichi leaves while she enters her house and hears the phone ringing. But when she picks it up, all she hears is a grown man making happy noises, not knowing that the person was Sohei. The next day, it's finally time for lunch, and Ruichi notices Sohei glaring at him. However, he decides to ignore him and leave. He believes that Sohei must be misunderstanding something between him and Rindu and doesn't want to get involved with such a creep. Then, he begins wondering if the two of them will get together when Rindu is always clinging to him instead of Sohei. In the end, Ruichi decides not to think about such stuff and realizes that something's wrong with him whenever he's with Rindu. Just when he decides to stop being involved with Rindu, the storeroom door opens and Rindu appears out of nowhere. Ruichi questions why she came to the storeroom, and she reminds him to call her by her first name. After that, Rindu says that she wants to ask him something and questions if he had something going on with her mother. Apparently, she figured pretty quickly judging from Seiki's demeanor and way of speaking. Shockingly, Ruichi agrees and lets Rindu know that he clapped her mother. Afterward, he begins thinking that Rindu might hate and despise him and knows that it's the route he was hoping for. But to his surprise, she thanked him instead, telling Ruichi that her father passed away and her mother always used to be sad and lonely. According to her, Ruichi was the one who provided solace for her and brought a smile on her face with his back shots. When Ruichi tries to argue with her, Rindu mentions that he did cheer Seiki up, and for that, she wishes to express her gratitude. This makes Ruichi realize that she is something else and begins wondering how he is supposed to push away someone like that. Additionally, there is one more thing she wants to ask, and without hesitation, pins him on the ground, asking if he'll pump her the same way he pumped her mom. On the other hand, Sohei is stressed over this whole situation, and knows that he needs to get her away before Rindu gets tainted by Ruichi. Meanwhile, Ruichi tries to refuse, but when he notices her whole body trembling, Ruichi realizes that it must have taken a ton of courage for her to do this. He then replies that if she's asking if he would sleep with her or not, then of course he would. Rindu is surprised by this, but sadly, her roaring stomach interrupts this moment that they were having. Ruichi advises her to go and eat her lunch, making Rindu embarrassed and decides to make a run for it. Following that, Ruichi takes a sigh of relief and figures that he's in deep trouble. Elsewhere, Rindu is still running, thinking about her growling stomach and eventually stopping to realize that Ruichi actually sees her as a woman too. Thinking how awkward I'd be to face Rindu now, Ruichi decides to head back home. As soon as he enters his apartment, his phone begins ringing, and that caller turns out to be that hot MILF Seiki. Ruichi remembers that they exchanged numbers the last time he slept with her and eventually picks up the call. Seiki thanks him for picking up while Ruichi wonders if she wants to talk about Rindu. She then informs him about her business trip, asking Ruichi to stay at their house with Rindu till she's gone. Ruichi freaks out after hearing about this and reminds Seiki the kind of predator he is. This results in Seiki informing him about Rindu receiving weird letters and calls, which could be a stalker. She wants someone who can protect her to be by her side. Afterward, Ruichi mentions that Rindu knows about their relationship and tells Seiki that he might clap her daughter's peaches as well. Shockingly, Seiki says that it's not her place to interfere, but is sure that Ruichi won't force Rindu against her will. With that being said, she hangs up the call, leaving Ruichi anxious. Later that day, Ruichi finally arrives at their house, which shocks Rindu as she was sure he wouldn't come. Ruichi advises her to live like she normally does and ignore him, but she conceives it as a sleepover with Ruichi. Following that, Rindu invites him inside, and after he's done freeloading, Ruichi compliments her for being a culinary genius. After that, Ruichi makes sure to take a good look at her fine body, and when she asks if something is wrong, he refuses. Rindu then mentions how hot it is, and even when Ruichi tries to argue that it's not, she ignores him and takes off her clothing, giving him a better view. Ruichi gets surprised by this sudden change, while Rindu seems quite flustered. He tells her not to take it off if she's embarrassed and thinks about how those two big things are staring at him as well. Later, she tells her to take the bath first, and he takes her up on her offer, only to realize that he forgot his underwear. Having no other choice, Ruichi decides to go buy a new one, but Rindu suggests tagging along as well. However, he advises her to stay home as it's dark outside, telling her not to open the door no matter who shows up. Rindu seems annoyed after he leaves and begins wondering what he wants to buy. The thought of Ruichi buying some rubber enters her mind, only to get startled by the sound of the doorbell. She remembers Ruichi's advice not to open the door and decides to check who it is. Surprisingly, it turns out to be Sohei, who came to hand over something his mom made. As soon as she opens the door, Sohei forces his way inside her house and hugs Rindu. He then starts sniffing her and touching her rice cake, letting her know that he was the one sending letters. Rindu tries to get away, but she's too scared to shake him off. Following that, Sohei mentions Rindu getting tainted by Ruichi and pins her onto the ground, followed by him ripping the only piece of clothing he has on. After shutting her mouth with his hand, Sohei promises to purify her while Rindu can only hope for Ruichi to return. Furthermore, she can't believe something like this is happening as she has always seen Sohei as a little brother. Just as she gives up and closes her eyes, Ruichi opens the door and questions why Sohei is at Rindu's house. Tears start forming in Rindu's eyes while Sohei begins to panic as well. Instantly, Ruichi grabs his collar and picks him up. He then takes a look at Rindu, and after noticing her ripped clothes, Ruichi loses his cool. Sohei tells Ruichi to let him go, but Ruichi lands a brutal punch right on his face, causing Sohei to crash into the door. Following that, Ruichi grabs Sohei once again and shouts at him for being the one who scares her. Rindu notices that he seems quite different than usual, and just as Ruichi is about to beat Sohei to a pulp, Rindu stops her. This makes Sohei think that she might be taking his side, mentioning that he was sure Rindu would understand him. However, she ends up slapping him, telling him not to get involved with her anymore. Sohei can't believe that this is happening, and seeing the two lover birds standing in front of him, he begins to panic and runs out of the house crying. Rindu then falls on the ground in relief, and Ruichi puts his jacket on her, advising her to sit down and take a breath. The two of them then go to her room where Ruichi thinks how his plan to change the manga's story isn't working. Furthermore, he begins getting angry at Sohei again. Rindu thanks him for saving her, but he notices that she's still trembling. He tries to touch her but decides not to, as Rindu has now seen his scary side as well. In the end, he decides to go to the next room, but shockingly, Rindu tells him not to go. Furthermore, she mentions that it's different with Ruichi, as when he touches her, she feels safe and warm. Rindu then begins asking him to stay with her tonight, telling Ruichi to overwrite the experience she just had. Even though Ruichi has been with many girls, she still wants to be with him. Ruichi can't believe that she's saying that while Rindu lays on the bed, asking Ruichi to smash with all his might. Ruichi asks Rindu if she is serious, to which she replies that she is. Furthermore, she mentions that he is always there for her when she needs help, and ultimately confesses her love for him, saying that it's okay even if she's not the only one. Ruichi realizes that he has only messed around with women for fun and didn't know it'd be this hard when someone asks him to sleep with them. Following that, Ruichi gets on top of her and asks her about it for one last time. When she gives him the green light, Ruichi instantly begins kissing her and then proceeds to take off his shirt. Then, he makes sure to take off thing as well and gets a good feel of those lethal weapons she's been hiding all this time. Simultaneously, he slides the fingers in, giving her a better experience and her not wanting to stop. The next morning, Rindu wakes up and finds Ruichi sitting right next to her. She remembers what happened last night and gets flustered, causing Ruichi to freak out as well. Afterward, she greets him good morning and he greets her back. With that being said, Rindu decides to make breakfast for him, but gets reminded that her jugs are out in the open. This causes her to panic and asks Ruichi to leave. Following that, the two of them enjoy drinking some hot coffee together, and Rindu leans on Ruichi's shoulder, saying that she is really happy. Additionally, she mentions that her stomach still feels tingly, making Ruichi spit his coffee. He realizes that she's giving off a really naughty vibe since earlier and remembers last night when he was done after 8 seconds. But when Rindu questioned why he stopped, Ruichi made an excuse, saying that such acts aren't for him to take on a whim. He then mentioned that she must be tired and forced Rindu to fall asleep. Back in the present, Rindu comments on how gentle he was last night, and he advises her not to make such faces or someone will misunderstand. Eventually, she questions if they will continue from where they left off. Ruichi reminds her that he has slept with several girls including her mother and says that they aren't a good match for each other. This makes Rindu say that Ruichi seemed like he was enduring something during the act, and even his eyes became somewhat fierce. Ruichi remembers his past and figures that she had noticed. Meanwhile, Rindu offers to listen to his problems if he wants to talk about it, promising to be by his side and giving her first time to him. Ruichi looks at her and lets out a sigh, saying that she is really pure and innocent. Apparently, from his perspective, Rindu appears really pure, which is why he wishes her to stay the way she is. Before she then questions this statement, Seiki returns home in a hurry and tells them that she asked her manager to let her go early. Then, she takes a look at their faces and figures that she might have interrupted something. This makes both of them panic, and Rindu decides to make some more coffee and walks away. Seiki then asks Ruichi about what he did and figures that they must have done the deed. Shockingly, she then ends up kissing him and says that he must have done this much with Rindu. Furthermore, she jokes about making it a daughter-mother corn plot and leaves to put down her luggage. The next day at school, Ruichi notices Rindu looking at him, but quickly looks away after he notices. He thinks about how her reaction is too obvious and starts wondering if they can go out, considering that he can't return the same pure feelings as her. The numb emotions past Ruichi felt still remain within him. On the other hand, the girls ask Shirasagi about why Sohei is absent, but he doesn't seem to have any clue as well. Following that, Rindu calls out Ruichi's name and suggests going to his house to cook dinner again. On their way back, Ruichi asks Rindu not to stick so close to him as people might start weird rumors about them. However, Rindu replies that those rumors will make her happier, not knowing that others might see her in a bad light. Furthermore, the girls of their class are starting to see the real Ruichi after Rindu talked to them. Additionally, she really wants him to enjoy her meals, and after hearing his stomach growl, Yuichi ends up agreeing. Back home, Rindu is about to start cooking when the doorbell rings, and it turns out to be Yorimi back from her trip. Ruichi realizes that there couldn't have been a worse time for her to visit. Afterward, she informs them about the trip she went on and mentions how Ruichi brought home such a cutie. Ruichi tells Yorimi to give her heads up when she's coming, while Rindu recognizes Yorimi as the one who visited earlier as well. This causes her to assert her dominance by grabbing Ruichi's arm, making Yorimi quite surprised. Eventually, she introduces herself to Rindu and Rindu does the same, still not letting go of his arm. Then, she tells Yorimi about her one-sided crush and her plan to stay by Ruichi's side forever. Yorimi finds it pretty cute and asks Ruichi to go and do some shopping for them as there aren't enough groceries for the three of them. Apparently, she wants to eat home-cooked meals of a younger girl and gives some cash for the ingredients to the broke playboy. Ruichi tries to argue with them and Yorimi questions if he wants girls to go out for him. Nonetheless, he seems worried about leaving Rindu alone with an exhibitionist like Yorimi, but Rindu mentions that it'll be alright as she wants to talk to Yorimi as well. Having no other excuse, Ruichi ends up leaving the house, wondering why he's getting the feeling of being excluded. Yorimi then reassures Rindu that she doesn't want to become a romantic rival with her as she only likes Ruichi for his unique positions in bed. However, she's aware that Rindu is genuinely in love with Ruichi and Rindu informs her that she even initiated things the other day. Yorimi then mentions that Rindu's feelings matter the most and she might have advised her to think about it, but Ruichi has now changed. Rindu questions if it has something to do with his past, to which she agrees. According to her, Ruichi still carries some darkness in his heart, and she believes that Rindu might be able to heal him someday. Rindu also begins thinking about how Ruichi never talks about his life with her and wonders what could have happened to him. On the other hand, Ruichi is thinking about how it feels to be a slave and remembers the time when he got slapped by his hot mom. His father questioned his mother if she was going to mess around with other men, causing the two of them to regret their decision of marrying each other. After she left, Ruichi tried to console his father, only to get yelled at and told that he didn't consider Ruichi as his son. Sometime later, both his parents kicked the bucket and his grandfather decided to send him some money, but told Ruichi to live on his own. In the present, Ruichi finally returns home and finds Yorimi grabbing Rindu's humongous honkers, leaving Ruichi in a state of shock. After they are done eating dinner, Yorimi mentions how it feels like a sleepover and suggests going to a club and having some fun. Ruichi reminds her that the two of them have school tomorrow, but Yorimi mentions that she wants to see Rindu wearing some flashy outfit, saying that he probably wants to see it as well. Surprisingly, Rindu wants to try them as well, making Yorimi excited to do a complete makeover. Following that, Yorimi makes sure to have fun changing Rindu's hairstyle and eventually makes her wear a rather lewd dress. Furthermore, she begins complimenting her for looking cute, and when they ask Ruichi about his opinion, he says that Rindu was always cute to begin with. However, he's still worried about Rindu showing a lot of skin, but Yorimi interrupts, deciding to leave quickly. On their way to the club, Rindu mentions that it's her first time going to a club and coincidentally, they come across Sohei. When asked what he's doing there, Sohei replies that he is going to the cram school and questions Ruichi about fooling around with two baddies on his own. Additionally, he begins saying that Rindu is being deceived by him. Just then, Rindu calls out his name and begins undoing her hair, showing him the real her. Sohei gets shocked seeing her wear such clothes, and she doubles down by kissing Ruichi in front of him. This causes Sohei's soul to leave his body, while Rindu tells him that she understands what kind of person Ruichi is and why she chooses to do this. After that, both the girls start asking Sohei to scram. Shockingly, Ruichi also decides to end him with his ultimate move, and after grabbing their waist, he warns Sohei not to lay hands on Rindu again, as she's not the same girl he knows. At the club, a freak is feeling a hottie's thick thighs while she begs for someone to help her. Meanwhile, after his tough guy act, Ruichi is feeling drained and eventually, they arrive at the club. Rindu seems nervous as it's her first time and Ruichi mentions that they'll be going straight home afterward. As soon as they enter the club, Yorimi takes Rindu away to buy some drinks. While they are busy drinking, some desperate loners try to hit on them, but Yorimi lets them know that they are with someone. However, they refuse to give up and try touching Rindu, but end up getting slapped by her. She says that there's only one man allowed to touch her. This pisses them off until Rindu appears, questioning their intentions. Both of them their pants after seeing Ruichi, and he advises them to pick some other girls, or he'll beat them to a pulp. In the end, the boys decide to leave and Ruichi mentions how this kind of thing happens so quickly. Rindu remembers the time when Ruichi helped her for the first time and Ruichi says that it was just a coincidence and not that big of a deal. Yorimi then notices Ruichi ogling Rindu's jugs and makes up an excuse to leave the two of them alone. After she leaves, Rindu grabs Ruichi's hands, saying that it's hard for a girl like her to get used to it. Ruichi adds that he was surprised to see her come to such a place, to which Rindu replies that she wanted to change her image and have him see her like this. Additionally, she was curious about the places Ruichi has been to, but is now aware that a club doesn't really suit her. Ruichi laughs at her and mentions that there is no need for her to go out of her place, as he definitely prefers the usual Rindu. She gets flustered after hearing this and ends up agreeing. Just then, Ruichi hears Yorimi's voice and notices some men trying to mess with her. One of those guys ends up groping the other girl's melons, making Ruichi empty his drink on that guy's head. Furthermore, he calls him a molester, causing that guy to get furious. But after seeing the look on Ruichi's face, he calms down and decides to leave. Meanwhile, Yorimi asks the other girl if she is okay, and she ends up thanking the three of them. Apparently, her name is Satsuki, and she came to the club with some friends but was left alone in the end. Yorimi advises her to be assertive at times like this, and she agrees. Rindu also informs her that it's her first time as well, suggesting that she raise her voice the next time something happens. Ruichi adds that quiet girls like her are prime targets for playboys, and that she'll be devoured if she stays like this. Satsuki freaks out after seeing his god-awful face and hides behind Rindu, leaving the poor guy depressed. Yorimi reassures Satsuki that Ruichi is a high school student, causing her to check him out head to toe. In the end, Yorimi suggests making a toast and chatting for a bit. Satsuki ends up enjoying the drinks and says that this is the best drink she's ever had. Additionally, she compliments Ruichi for being kind despite his ogre-looking face. He then advises her not to come to the club as it's best for her, and Satsuki gathers up the courage to ask for Ruichi's number. This comes as a shock to him, and Satsuki rephrases that she wants everyone else's number as well. She wishes to talk to them again sometime and Yorimi gladly agrees to exchange contacts. Hearing her name makes Ruichi wonder if he's heard it before and figures that it must be his imagination. After they are done, Yorimi decides to walk Satsuki back home and leaves the two lovebirds alone. Ruichi notices that Rindu seems annoyed, and she mentions how he prefers girls like Satsuki, as he must have liked her two big basketballs. However, she was just joking, as Rindu is aware that Ruichi doesn't ignore people in trouble, as it was the same case with her too. Additionally, she doesn't think of it as a coincidence but a fateful encounter. Ruichi agrees, thinking that she might have taken a different route if they didn't meet back then. Afterward, Rindu mentions feeling jealous because of Satsuki and asks Ruichi to give her a kiss before they leave. Without hesitation, he agrees and locks lips with Rindu. However, she doesn't seem satisfied and wants more. Meanwhile, Ruichi thinks that Rindu is not someone who seeks him out for pleasure, which is why he doesn't want to cross the line with her so casually. After they are done, Ruichi suggests going back home, realizing that it was pretty close. On the other hand, Satsuki also returns home and regrets going to the club with her extroverted friends. She then begins thinking of Ruichi's face along with his manly features, causing her to get flustered. Following that, her little brother, Shirasagi, enters the room with her clothes and after giving them to her, questions why she came late and if she bagged herself a boyfriend. Satsuki freaks out and refuses, later deciding to go and take a bath. After she is done taking a bath, Satsuki realizes that she lost her underwear. Elsewhere, Ruichi thinks about Satsuki and remembers that she is the story's next heroine. This makes him wonder if she is also being targeted by some dangerous dude. In that manga, Satsuki went to meet Sohei, and he recognized Satsuki as Shirasagi's sister. She mentions that she's aware of how it feels to have their heart broken, making Sohei think that the same happened to her, to which she agrees. Earlier, Satsuki was tied up by her brother, Shirasagi. He started off by exposing those G-cups and started grabbing them like there's no tomorrow. Satsuki figured that no one would come to help her, and at one point, she stopped caring about what happened. Some days later, Shirasagi returned home and found her sister acting like his lapdog, which is something he really enjoyed. Back in the present, Ruichi wakes up after dreaming about all this and realizes that the continuation of the manga came flooding back to him. In the manga, Satsuki was taken advantage of by her own brother, making Ruichi disgusted and remembering why he dropped that manga. Currently, he is sure that her brother is his class fellow Shirasagi and didn't know there were still such people nearby. As he is now involved in this matter, Ruichi doesn't plan to let that thing happen to Satsuki. Later in school, Ruichi looks at Shirasagi, who is busy talking to the ladies of their class. He notices how Shirasagi looks like a normal guy when out of nowhere, his friend named Makoto appears. Following that, Makoto invites Ruichi to a party at the club, but Ruichi decides not to go. Makoto then mentions how Ruichi has suddenly changed as he used to be quite a well-known playboy before. Nonetheless, Makoto thinks Ruichi looks better this way. Just then, Rindu interrupts and greets the two of them. Ruichi asks her not to appear out of nowhere as it scares him. She then gives him the lunch she prepared for him and walks away. Makoto begins teasing Ruichi for getting a homemade lunch from his loving wife, and soon after, the teacher arrives. He informs the class that Sohei has transferred to another school, causing everyone to talk about him. Ruichi looks at Rindu and figures that this is the best for her. But with him out of the picture, Ruichi wonders how the story will progress. Right now, he believes nothing bad happened to Satsuki and hopes that the second sequel route disappears as well. Eventually, it's lunchtime and Makoto once again begins teasing Ruichi about how tasty the food looks, and Ruichi lets him know that he won't be sharing any. Afterward, he begins enjoying lunch, and seeing him makes Rindu think how cute he looks. Her friends mention that Rindu is looking at Ruichi again and start talking about how he might not be a bad guy, making Rindu excitedly agree. After he is done eating, Ruichi decides to take a short nap, but gets interrupted by Shirasagi, who asks to talk to him in private. Ruichi panics and calls out his name, wondering why he wants to talk. In the end, he agrees and the two of them appear behind the school building. Shirasagi mentions that Satsuki told her about what happened at the club and asked Ruichi if that's true. When Ruichi agrees that it is, Shirasagi bows down and thanks Ruichi for saving his sister. This comes as a shock to Ruichi, while Shirasagi adds that something bad could have happened to Satsuki, which is why he wishes to express his gratitude as well. Ruichi thinks that Shirasagi seems like a decent guy, and Shirasagi mentions that he thought Ruichi was a delinquent. But now he knows that he's actually kind, which is why he's famous with the ladies. Ruichi lets him know that it's not like that, and Shirasagi walks away, thanking Ruichi for his time. Back in the class, Ruichi once again begins thinking of Shirasagi's villain route's possibility and decides to warn Satsuki about it anyway. On their way home, he thanks Rindu for the lunch and she offers to make it again. Ruichi gladly takes up the offer and out of nowhere, she begins hugging him. He mentions that they are still near the school, and when his hand brushes against her melons, he makes a weird noise. Later, she apologizes for it and asks if she should come to make dinner again. However, Ruichi refuses as she has helped enough, and now he wants to do his own cooking. Rindu gets shocked hearing this statement and mentions how she thought Ruichi can't even cook rice on his own. With that being said, it is time for them to go home, and just as Ruichi is about to leave, Rindu stops him and asks for a goodbye kiss. He gladly agrees, and after they are done kissing, Rindu thanks him and says goodbye. At home, Ruichi thinks how he feels restless after kissing her and figures that it must be due to him trying to suppress his intense feelings. Eventually, he decides not to make their relationship any more complicated. Additionally, he made rice with egg for dinner as it's the easiest and the best thing to make. However, the doorbell interrupts him, and as soon as he opens the door, Yorimi gives him a hug. Surprisingly, she's not the only one, as this time, Satsuki came with her as well. Do you believe that Ruichi will be able to save Satsuki from her vicious brother? Comment manga if you'd like a part 2 of this series. As usual, thank you for tuning in, and we'll catch you in the next one.